How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Mother Sponge 5000. Today is December 3rd, 2021, and today we're going to focus on potentially two major snowstorms that could impact a lot of the Midwest as well as the Northeast next week in the more populated sectors as well in the major cities where you could experience your first major snowfall of the season. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the GFS model at this time, and you see that throughout the United States it's currently quiet, but that's quickly about to change headed into this weekend and into around midweek next week, where we could see our first major snowstorms for a lot of you guys in the northern Midwest as well as a lot of areas in the Northeast. So let's first begin by taking a look at the United States right now, and you see it's quiet, and it's actually very oddly quiet for most of the United States, as we're seeing such a stable environment to the point where there's no real precipitation anywhere, or a large amount of precipitation anywhere in the United States at this time. And it's quite rare to see in the lower 48 not one area receiving precipitation at that time. But that's quickly about to change, because we're going to see a trough come off the Pacific Northwest, and this will be our first major snowstorm that's expected to move through, primarily impacting the northern Midwest states, and it could bring close to maybe a foot of snow in some areas in the Midwest. So you see that as this low pressure system moves ashore along the Pacific Northwest, you see that not only is the low pressure system at least decently powerful, but it's bringing snow along with it, and it's also bringing a lot of cold air on the backside of this low pressure system. While this low pressure system isn't necessarily like extremely powerful, it certainly is a lot more powerful than the previous clipper systems we've been seeing move through the northern Midwest as well as the Northeast. So it's expected that this should bring a little bit more precipitation than usual, and it could develop a little bit faster than usual as it moves further eastward. If we were to continue to move forward, you see that the snow eventually extends to a lot of North Dakota, and we do see some heavier bands begin to develop associated with this area of snow showers. And we also see the low pressure system begin to drop in millibar pressure, which is showing that this low pressure system is strengthening as it heads further eastward, because we're going to see a decent amount of cold air on the backside of this low pressure system, and it's going to interact with the warmer and more moist air mass that's located right around the Midwest as well as the eastern half of the United States, and it should not only strengthen this low pressure system, but develop a little bit more heavier bands, which could lead to heavier snowfall. As you see, the pressure continues to drop, and as a low pressure system continues to strengthen, it sort of creates this endless cycle where it rapidly begins to strengthen, and the strengthening process accelerates, especially during the winter time, because as the low pressure system develops, we begin to see a stronger northwesterly as well as southeasterly flow, which brings the warmer air further northward and the cool air further southward. And as it does so, it increases the winds, it increases the instability, and it just creates an endless cycle where the lift gets a little bit more higher. The buoyancy of the air molecules definitely goes up as the northwesterly flow and the southeasterly flow continue to strengthen, and it just creates an endless cycle where we're going to see the low pressure system strengthen as it heads further eastward and develop heavier snow bands as it does so as well, where a lot of North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northern Michigan could get involved in some heavier snow here. And you see that the low pressure system continues to strengthen as it heads further eastward, with the millibar pressure dropping to 987 millibars. However, with this snowstorm, it seems like the trajectory of this low pressure system will primarily be further northward, primarily staying just north of the United States-Canadian border. So a lot of the Northeast, pretty much most of the Northeast, should miss out on the snow for at least this low pressure system, but this next low pressure system that could move through could bring snow a lot further southward, and it could impact the big cities as well. This won't be exclusive to just the interior northeast sections, as the bigger cities such as Philadelphia, New York City, Boston could get involved with this next snowstorm. But for this snowstorm moving through, this should primarily impact the Midwest, but it should be heavy snow with strengthening low pressure system as it heads further eastward, because like I said, once a low pressure strengthens, the winds strengthen, which means that the northerly and southerly flows strengthen, which means that the cooler air further northward will interact with the warmer air further southward, and that will create more lift for even more strengthening of the low pressure system to strengthen the winds even further, and it just creates an endless cycle where the strengthening process accelerates as it encounters a little bit more instability and the winds get stronger around low pressure system, where you see that it peaks out around 978 millibars by the time it reaches eastern Canada, and 968 by the extreme eastern portion of Canada at this point. But by this point, it should be well far north of the United States, so the Northeast should pretty much miss out on any sort of snow from this, as it seems like the trajectory of this low pressure system will move just far enough northward. Now, in terms of the confidence with this first snowstorms forecast, we are pretty confident at this point that we're going to see a major snowstorm for a lot of Midwest associated with this low pressure system, because in this run, I'm only going around 48 hours out, and you see that we're seeing heavy snow impact a lot of the northern Midwest, and when we're especially around the time frame of 3 days out when it comes to forecasting an event, a weather event, it becomes pretty confident that it's likely going to happen at this time, and we even become more confident when the time frame only ranges from 2 days out. So for northern Midwest, this should be you should prepare for a major snowstorm now, as it seems likely this will occur. And in terms of the accumulating snowfall that the GFS model is currently forecasting, let's take a look at the accumulated snowfall in regards to depth change, which is a little bit more accurate. Okay, this model doesn't seem to be working right now, so let me go back and refresh, because it doesn't seem like the accumulated snowfall isn't working with the GFS model when it comes to depth change. So we're gonna use a ratio where 1 inch of precipitable rainfall will equate to 10 inches of snow, which is still for the most part accurate, but a little bit less accurate than the snowfall forecast when it comes to depth change. But you see that if we were to continue to move forward, you see that a lot of the northern Midwest experiences an area of 3 to 6 inches of snow, and the snowfall peaks right around the northern portion of Michigan and extending to the extreme northern portion of Wisconsin, where you're seeing a good area of 8 to 12 inches of snow, which would be the peak area when it comes to snowfall accumulation. And even the northern Minnesota and the extreme northern portion of North Dakota closer to a border could experience 6 to 12 inches of snow. So this is definitely something you want to pay close attention to, as this should be a pretty major snowstorm for a lot of you guys further northward. And in terms of the big cities, Minneapolis could get involved in right around 1 to 3 inches of snow. It's going to be a close forecast for you guys. It really all depends on the trajectory of this low pressure system. While we're confident there's a major snowstorm, for those right along the rain-snow line border, it's always more difficult to forecast how much snowfall accumulation you'll experience. But I'd say prepare in Minneapolis, because it's better to be safe than sorry. And at this point, the forecast seems to hover around 1 to 3 inches for your area, so make sure to pay close attention to that. Now let's move on to our next potential snowstorm that could impact a lot more of the Northeast and areas further southward as well. If we were to take a look at the precipitation map, so this first snowstorm will move through and will pretty much be out of the United States by the Tuesday timeframe. But you see that another low pressure system comes off the Pacific Northwest, and this could impact a lot of areas in the Northeast later next week, right around mid next week. And you see by Tuesday timeframe, this low pressure system is right around the Midwest at this time, and it's bringing light snow showers to a a lot of the areas right around the Midwest further southward than this first low pressure system. So you might want to keep that in mind. But snowfall should be relatively light as this low pressure system isn't really powerful at this time. It's only hovering around 1,000 millibars, and there isn't a lot of buoyancy with the air molecules when the millibar pressure is this low. So, but it should strengthen because you see that along with as the slow pressure system moves eastward, we do see a pretty significant jet stream dip, and it's somewhat induced by this first low pressure system that's moving through because it brings a strong northwesterly flow aloft, bringing a lot of that cold air from Canada further southward, and that creates a significant jet stream dip. So we're seeing the cold air now interact with the warmer air that's further southward, closer to the southeast, and that will set up for a very unstable air mass for this low pressure system to develop and rapidly intensify as it moves further eastward, because you see that as this low pressure system moves further eastward, there's just enough instability and just enough of a jet stream dip to allow a lot of lift and allow buoyancy with the air molecules further southward, and that will allow for a lot more water vapor to condensate in the upper levels of the atmosphere for precipitation to occur, and that precipitation will change over the snow as it heads over the freezing line. And you see that this snow area affects a lot of the Midwest. Chicago's getting involved, Michigan, as well as Milwaukee is getting involved, but the snowfall becomes a lot more significant by the time we reach by the time the slow pressure system approaches northeast, where you do see the snow bands develop into becoming a little bit heavier, and it impacts a lot of areas further southward because you see that New York City is getting involved, while the current forecast by the GFS model is forecasting snow to change over to rain for New York City and maybe Philadelphia. If it snows right around that area, it still could easily bring 1 to 3 inches of snow in this scenario for the New York City metropolitan area, and even more for Boston, which is a little bit further northward and will experience a little bit more of the heavier band since it's further eastward, and low pressure system will develop a little bit more as it heads further eastward. But you see that by the time we reach right around the Wednesday timeframe, this low pressure system becomes very powerful. It looks very northeaster-like, where we're seeing just very heavy snow and a decently strong northeasterly flow associated with this low pressure system, and it brings a heavy amount of snow to the interior portions of the northeast. In terms of the snowfall forecast, the GFS model is expecting when it comes to snowfall accumulation for this upcoming snowstorm for the northeast. If we were to move forward, this is expected to occur right around 5 to 4 days from now. So the certainty is becoming a little bit more, is definitely becoming a little bit more higher at this point, but there's still uncertainty regarding the forecast. And you see that especially the interior portions of the northeast are expecting 8 to 12 inches of snow, and in the higher elevations such as close to the Adirondacks, you easily could experience over a foot of snow if the GFS model scenario were correct. In terms of New York City metropolitan area, New York City in this scenario is pretty much borderline, right around 1 to 3 inches of snow. But you see that Boston's experiencing 1 to 3 inches, and while Philadelphia is missing out on the snow spot in this scenario, it becomes a different story when we take a look at the European model, because the European model wants to take the snow further southward, and it's going to be difficult to forecast when we'll exactly see the snowfall. Where exactly the trajectory of this storm will be over the next couple of days, since we're still right around 4 to 5 days out. But it definitely becomes interesting when we see the European model bring the snow further southward, and not only that, it brings the heaviest snow closer to New York City and right around the Boston area than even the interior northeast. So where New York City in this scenario is experiencing 3 to 6 inches of snow. So there's definitely quite a large disagreement when it comes to where both of the most reliable computer models want to bring the snow. And it really all depends on how pronounced this jet stream dip is, because if it's a little bit more pronounced, we'll see the cold air filter in further southward, which would mean that areas further southward, such as New York City and Philadelphia, will experience heavier snow. But if the jet stream dip was a little bit less pronounced, and we're going to see the cold air be further northward, and as a result, we're going to see the snow a little bit further northward, to where maybe the major cities miss out on most of the snow. So still a very uncertain forecast. I'll keep you guys updated regarding the trajectory changes, and what really will determine the trajectory of this low pressure system is really the first low pressure system moving through, expecting to bring snow to the northern Midwest, because it really all depends on how strong that northwesterly flow will be, to now determine not only the amount of unstable air in the eastern half of the United States, but how far south that jet stream will dip for the cold air to stay closer, further southward in the northeast. So still a lot of uncertainty, and you see that the European model wants to strengthen this low pressure system earlier than the GFS model, which would mean that where we would see stronger winds associated with this, stronger northwesterly flow, and that would mean that the cold air would stay further southward. And what's interesting is that the jet stream in this scenario sort of straightens out, which means that there's that the jet stream doesn't really go from this direction, but it's a little bit straight in the European model's case, because and that would promote more snow, because there's less likely of a chance that the jet stream peaks right around the eastern half, the extreme coastal areas, for the warm air to filter in, as a more straightened out jet stream would keep the cold air further southward. So still a lot of uncertainty with the trajectory of this low pressure system, but I'll make sure to at least update you guys once we get more updates and confidence with the forecast in the future. But what I can say is that more likely than not, we will likely see some sort of snowstorm in the northeast by the midweek next week. The question still remains exactly where and how much snow you should expect. We are definitely getting a little bit more confidence based on what the two computer models are saying, that we will see some sort of snowstorm. It's just a matter of how much snow and how powerful this low pressure system will be, and the exact trajectory of this low pressure system in the future. So let's take a look at now the Arctic oscillation over the next several days, and you see that headed into midweek next week, we do see a little bit of a drop when it comes to the positive Arctic oscillation, which means that we're more likely to see jet stream dips and a cooler air mass as a result. So that's definitely something we need to keep in mind. And now here's my current snowfall forecasts, and I'm giving specific numbers here because I do believe we are at least confident enough to say that there will be some sort of major snowstorm, but still keep in mind that we're around 4 days out for the northeast. So the forecast is still certainly subject to change. But if the current scenarios hold up over the next several days, you should expect right around 1 to 3 inches of snow right around New York City area, and I'm pretty much averaging the average between the two snowfall accumulation forecasts. Like for the European model, it's expecting around 3 to 6 inches in New York City, which would be the worst case scenario in this case. But for the GFS model, it's mainly only expecting a dusting right around New York City. So the average of that is right around 1 to 3 inches, and this could extend as far south as Philadelphia as well. For Boston, you should expect a little bit more snow, where the cold air will be located. The cooler air will be located, and in portions of New England and interior portions of upstate New York, you could experience 6 to 12 inches of snow, which would be a significant snowstorm for you guys and very major for you guys. And even further westward into Ohio and Indiana, you could experience 1 to 3 inches as well. But for the first snowstorm for a lot of the northern Midwest, you should expect 6 to 12 inches, which is a significant snowstorm. You guys need to prepare. And North Dakota should expect around 1 to 3 to 3 to 6 inches in the extreme northern portion of North Dakota. So make sure to prepare in the northern Midwest, I'd say. For the Northeast, I'd say at least be aware of this, because we could still because you could see your first major snowstorm of the year. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a good day.